What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and today we're talking about IndyCar's 2017 season here before the St. Petersburg opener. And today specifically I'm going to be talking about some of the storylines that I'm interested in seeing play out over the course of the season. And actually I got 5 storylines that I'm interested in seeing. If you're wanting to hear more about the silly season, I talked about that in the previous video, the part 1 of 2 here. So you can go ahead and find that down in the description if you want to watch that, if you're not familiar with a lot of the changes that have occurred during the off-season for IndyCar. So anyways, let's get into the storylines. And these are in no particular order, I should add. First up, Brian Herta is going to be the new chief strategist for Marco Andretti, replacing Michael Andretti, his father. Now this is one of those things where some people are going to be like, Marco Andretti, who cares? I mean, the guy's been out to lunch for how many years? He shouldn't even be on the grid. We all know the only reason he is even still racing in IndyCar is the fact that, well, he's an Andretti, his dad owns the team, and that's basically that. But if you recall, there was a time, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I'm pretty sure, where Marco Andretti was actually a talented young driver coming on the scene. Maybe he wasn't going to be, Michael Andretti version 2. Maybe he wasn't going to be anywhere even close to Mario Andretti, because that's expecting a hell of a lot from any driver. But maybe he'd actually belong on the grid and be a competent, capable driver winning a few races. That's what we all expected. Never happened. Ever. It just fell off the bus. And you recall another driver in IndyCar with a similar scenario, even down to having a very famous last name within North American open wheel racing. Graham Rahal. Driver burst on the scene at an early age. In his case, he actually won a race as a teenager. He looked talented, looked like he'd belong. Instead, he started smashing into everything on like a near constant basis, and nothing seemed to pan out for him. And then in 2015, in the case of Graham Rahal, he's driving for his father's team, Rahal, Letterman, and Lanigan. They get rid of Bobby Rahal, his father, calling the race strategy, and suddenly, Graham Rahal actually looks like a driver once again who was talented, like he should have been driving an IndyCar. Somehow, just the different voice, the change of scenery, what's going on and everything, seemed to really help him actually get back into where he should have been. Could we see the same thing play out for Marco Andretti? Now, I don't think it's going to be as big of a turnaround as what it was with Graham Rahal, because I don't think Marco has the same level of talent, but I do think he's going to run a bit better this year. Then again, it is hard to run worse than what he's been doing the last few years. Next up, Schmidt Peterson Motorsports. Now this team is going to be competitive in 2017. I can guarantee it. In fact, I would say that they are one of the dark horses to somehow, if chips fall their way somehow, similar to what happened with Graham Rahal in 2015, for example, that's one of the 2 drivers very well could end up in the championship hunt deep into the season, if not in the season finale at Sonoma. Finally, they managed to return both the drivers in James Hinchcliffe as well as Mikhail Aleshin. And you might be saying, okay, so what? Well, they couldn't return both drivers in 2015 due to the Russian sanctions and everything that kept Aleshin aside. And if you know anything about what happened last season, well, Hinchcliffe won the pole in the Indy 500, ran exceptionally well at Texas. Schmidt Peterson Motorsports looked far more consistent on a race-to-race basis and running further up the grid rather than doing that thing that they have been doing for every now and then the last several years prior, where they had run really well one week and then they'd just kind of be invisible the next week. And you know that Mikhail Aleshin ran well in Europe, back in the junior series days, against drivers that are now racing in Formula 1, for crying out loud. You know that he ran very well at Mid-Ohio and could have won the race if not for pit stop issues late in the race, as well as at Pocono, where he finished second last year. Running very well, running very competitive, running up front the whole race. If you watched his qualifying at Indianapolis last year, he's got something. That's for dang sure. So I do think this is going to be a team to actually watch. The continuity from 2016 to 2017 and the growth that's going to happen is going to do Schmidt Peterson Motorsports really good, and they're going to move further up the grid in the next season. Next up, I double dip a bit here, and that would be Ganassi switch to Honda, and how that plays out for the Honda teams, as well as the greatness that is Scott Dixon. So first of all, on the team side of things, the switch from the dominant, it's clearly dominant, and basically everybody knows that and everybody accepts that. I'm sure even HPD would say the same. Chevrolet kit to the Honda kit. It's a bit of a head scratcher, especially in 2017, with 2018 having spec aerodynamics, which means a whole new body kit, which means that Ganassi has to purchase aerodynamic pieces for just this year to run the Honda kit, and then they have to basically throw it away because it's going to be of no use in 2018 and all that. Obviously, they're going to be behind the 8-ball, given that the other teams have a full year of testing and tweaking and racing under their belt with those same aerodynamics. But I think there's something to this, and I think there's something that isn't maybe really known, because I do think that there's going to be a bit of a surprise here. I think some people are just kind of looking at things on the surface and seeing that, well, Ganassi lost target on their IndyCar operation. Obviously that was one of the best sponsors a team could ever possibly have, and they're definitely not replaceable. You see the testing photos in Phoenix as well as Gateway, where you see Scott friggin' Dixon driving a blank white car with a blank white fire suit, and you're like, they needed the money. That's why they switched to Honda. They needed the money to fund the car to get it out there. But Ganassi can find a sponsor. There's no doubt he can find a sponsor. That's not the case. I do not think it is a money issue, other than they believe that they can be competitive. They believe that it offers an advantage by stepping outside the shadow of Team Penske, basically, taking over from Andretti Autosports as being that lead team within the Honda umbrella, and possibly doing more and getting an advantage in 2018, 2019 down the road. I also have to consider that perhaps Honda isn't as bad as we think it is on the road course and shorter ovals. Maybe it's actually a case where teams like Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan, as well as Schmidt, Peterson are actually running maybe better than what they could be expected to do, but it's not the kit that is holding them back. It is just their engineering ability, their talent level. Maybe that's the reason. After all, there's a reason why the Big Three is the Big Three, and why they always run up front, because that's what they do. It's no secret that Andretti has struggled for the last several years on a multitude of different factors. Could it be that Andretti Autosports just sucks? The teams that are running well under the Honda umbrella are doing as good as they possibly could, and that the disadvantage from the perceived Chevy dominance to the Hondas floating there generally about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tenths behind isn't actually a aerodynamics advantage, but rather just a team advantage? I don't know. Yes, I do think Chevy has the advantage, and I do think they will be faster, and I do think Ganassi is definitely behind the 8-ball on this one, but I will not be surprised if come the end of the year the Ganassi cars are competitive week in, week out, running up there with the Chevys. As for the greatness of Scott Dixon, assuming that the Honda kit is indeed as far off as we expect it to be and as it has been, again, I may have just given you some reasons why it may not actually be as far off as we think it is, but assuming things are exactly what we already know them to be based off of all of 2016, we're going to see one of the best drivers ever to race in the North American Open Wheel Racing Series driving a car that is clearly at a disadvantage, and everybody's going to know it, and everybody's going to be watching, and sort of similar to Fernando Alonso in Formula 1 right now, where he's driving for McLaren Honda in that case. He's clearly got a car that is not competitive, but at the same time, you're watching a top-notch driver do his thing, do the best he possibly can, get everything out of the car, and there's an excitement in watching that, even if it isn't necessarily at the front of the pack. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see how that plays out. Not to mention, how much is Scott Dixon worth to Honda as a whole? How far can he send that car up the grid? Because if he's on his game, if he's on his form, and he doesn't fall into the slump like he kind of did last year, he could be competitive even still with the Honda disadvantage. I mean, he's Scott friggin' Dixon. And last but not least, and rather cynically, can the forward progress continue in IndyCar? Now, if you happen to know, last year, Jay Fry was appointed IndyCar's new president of competition. Basically the guy who does all the competition things within the series and all that, obviously. In terms of the scheduling, the aero kits and everything, basically sets the direction that the series is going to go in. He's a former NASCAR guy, and a lot of us were kind of like, hey, woohoo, NASCAR, no, don't do that. But after a year with him at the helm of the series, a lot of us really came to like the guy and say, hey, you know what? That guy gets it. That guy understands why this series has had so many freaking problems and why it is so headless and clueless and why it actually needs the things that are being done. Can that momentum be carried forward, as well as, again, rather cynically, how long is it until they run them out to the curb? Because we all know that tends to happen within this series, and that would be a friggin' shame after what the guy has shown us after a year. If you want to know why IndyCar ended up racing at Watkins Glen when they had a race that was never, ever, ever going to happen at Boston, quote-unquote, scheduled, he's the guy to blame. If you want to know why they ended up racing back at Phoenix, he's the guy to blame. If you want to know why, for 2018 there's going to be a spec bodywork, but it's hopefully going to look quite radically different and hopefully a much better looking car, to the point where they've said, hey, making the car look good is actually one of the primary concerns with this update for the 2018 bodywork. He's the guy to blame. But once again, we've seen this happen in IndyCar before, where guys who seemingly get it end up getting run to the curb. Will the forward momentum continue, and how long will it last? Yes, I am rather cynical on these things. But anyways, there's 5 things to watch for in the 2017 IndyCar season. Hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.